Anybody else? All right, Rita, would you please share?
Sure, I'd love to. Um, so I just been I was reading an article. It really blessed me, and I just wanted to share a little tidbit of it with you guys. And I'm going to share something from 1 Kings 17 as well. The article is called "Welcome to Your Place Called There," and I just thought that was a very catchy title. And in 1 Kings 17, which we will go there right now, starting in verse 1. I'm going to read from the Amplified. It says, "Now Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab, As the Lord, the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, therefore shall be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word. And the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Go from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan River." In 1 Kings 17, God gave Elijah clear instructions to go to a specific place, a ravine near the Jordan River called the brook Cherith, where God would provide for him. That's where God's provision would flow, not just anywhere Elijah decided to go. If Elijah had wandered off to another place, he wouldn't have received God's provision as God wanted to give it to him. It was directly linked to him being in the right place at the right time, doing what God called him to do. God's provision doesn't automatically follow you wherever you go. He doesn't send what you need to wherever you are, but rather he sends it to the place where he has called you to be. You might feel like you're doing everything right, but are you in your place called there? God doesn't always call us to easy places, but he will always provide when we are anywhere he's told us to go. If you're not where God told you to be, you might be missing out on everything he wants to give you. And then he goes on to talk about humbling himself before God and how faith and boldness rose up within him. And it wasn't by his natural personality, it was God's strength empowering him to do things that he wouldn't have otherwise done. So when God shows you something, in his word, and faith rises up inside of you, there's a boldness and authority that comes with it. You have to speak what God has put in your heart. It might feel uncomfortable or even unnatural at first, but when you step out in faith, God will back you up. Now, it's not just about boldness. We also have to use wisdom. And Elijah's story illustrates this too. After Elijah boldly confronted King Ahab, God foresaw the danger and told him, Get thee hence and hide thyself by the brook Cherith. So God didn't leave Elijah to face the threat alone. His instructions provided both sustenance and safety, shielding Elijah from harm while supplying his needs during the drought. I think that's really awesome in just 3 verses, how not only do we see the provision of God and what can take place if you are in your place called there where God has told you to go on any given day or chapter of your life or whatever it might be. And it's not that God holds back provisions. It's just that he knows where we need to be so he can really pour it on to us, open those windows of heaven. And I think it's amazing in those 3 verses that it covers that God also, that you also need the wisdom. And if God tells you, okay, get out of here, there's trouble, you get out of there, there's trouble. And he will also provide whatever it is you need. And then if we go on to read the next verse, I think this is so awesome how God tells him, I will provide, you'll be safe, don't worry. Verse 4, you shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to sustain you there with food. Wow. Okay. So if God can command the ravens to sustain him with food, I think he's probably not too worried and not concerned about being where God has told him to be. So I just thought that was a really sweet little passage and the way that this was presented about not only having the humility, but the boldness and the wisdom and really listening to God and where he's telling you to go so that you can receive everything he wants to give you instead of just little trinkles here and there because you're doing something else. And then he'll always make sure you're safe if you listen. So I thought that was really neat. Just 3 verses covers that whole thing. God's got a pretty powerful personality. So that's what I wanted to share.
That's awesome, Rita. Thank you for sharing that. That ties right in with a teaching that I heard recently about the same thing, about acting upon what God has put in front of you, what God is telling you to do or showing you to do. Then a breakthrough can come. And in that particular teaching, from a totally different person, because I know where that one came from. He pointed to later in that chapter 17, where God tells him to go, verse 7, tell us to go, well, no, not 7, but further down to the widow, and there to supply you with food. He had to go to that widow who only had enough for her and her son and say, oh, but first make me a cake. And that was the acting upon. It wasn't just him. The boldness and the courage to say that to a widow. Oh, your last bit of food, give it to me. that's huge. But it also gave her a place to put her faith, and all 3 of them, her son, her, and Isaiah were Elijah was fed, from there on out. Through that drought.
Wasn't a Judean. And she wasn't a
Right.
Judean.
Right, exactly. Yep. Because God knows anybody that there's so many examples throughout the Old Testament that he would supply to anybody that would give him his heart. That was the whole thing with Jonah and Nineveh. Jonah didn't want to go to Nineveh, but God knew if they heard his word that they would believe and that they would turn to him. So thank you, Rita. That was very nice. Who would like to be next? Okay, George.
Hi, I'm just inspired by what I've heard so far. And I just want to share a blessing that happened to me just recently. I've been working on my health issues, and they're not terrible health issues. But at my age, I was told by my physicians that I have to do this or do that and do this or do that. So right away, I just had to pray to God and ask him to show me what I need to do in this situation. And although I respect all the doctors and all the people in the medical profession for what they do, God is bigger than whatever they can offer. And if I don't have an answer, all I have to do is get, and I love the word because inspiration. And I always think of the word inspiration, and I think of what does inspiration mean to me? Does it mean in spirit action? That's what I was taught. And so I just started speaking in tongues and listening to Father how I should go about in regulating my blood pressure, which was totally whacked out. It was going in the wrong direction and causing problems. And I said, I stopped listening to all the adversaries, I call them, good people and well-meaning people. They had an answer for this and an answer for that and an answer for this. But I was taught from early on, you seek first aid, and that if that doesn't come about for you, you go to the second aid, and the most popular is you go to God. and say, I need an answer. So I got the inspiration to start working a regimen of natural vitamins. And within, this is my 5th day now. And my blood pressure has been normalized from the 3rd day onto the 5th day. It's, if anybody knows anything about blood pressure at all, it's around 120 over 70. And it's back to normal. I feel like a youngster again. And it's like, it's just, it blows my mind. It was a simple request, and God knows how to work in each and every one of us individually. And so he worked with me on my level to show me what to do. I followed his instructions and I get the results. And I still think better things are yet to come because I actually listened and I didn't, say, oh, that can't be from God. So I just thought I'd share that with everybody. And, it's just blessed me to no end. Thank you.
You and praise God. That's awesome. Yay!
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, God's bigger than the statistics.
It's so big. He's not hard to find. Okay. So, Deborah, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Would you like to go next?
Thank you. Well, I recently made two discoveries. One was one of my prayer partners, Greg Hadel, has been in contact with Reverend Steve Strezpeck. And Reverend Strezpeck was my Wake For coordinator, first year in residence. And he's got on his Facebook posts, he posted an 8-part series on Jesus Christ that I may know him. And oh my gosh, talk about breaking down strongholds of the mind of wrong doctrine. So I don't know if you need to be friends with him in order to read that, but you might go on and see if you can get to it. Jesus Christ that I might know him. It's, like I said, an 8-part kind of 8 posts. The other thing is Steve told Greg about this. They were talking about covenants in the Bible, and there's a teacher on YouTube. His name is Malcolm Smith, and Rosemary, this might be of interest to you because it's multiple videos. It's a whole series on covenant. And I was blown away just by the very first video. Now, mind you, the guy is a Trinitarian, so you have to rightly divide what he's saying. But what he's teaching about covenant it was new light to me. And the emphasis is on how God is a covenant God, and a covenant is something that you don't break under penalty of death. Once you make a covenant with someone, you must abide by that covenant to the death, and that every covenant involves blood. And you know that verse, I've graven you on the palms of my hands. There were different ways that different tribes would make blood covenants, but it all involved like either cutting your palm, they would slice the palm and your palm would bleed, and then you would shake hands with the other person who did the same thing. That's a blood covenant. Or they would slice their wrist or their finger. And if any of you watch Outlander, you know they did the blood covenant at the wedding. The bride and groom would slice their wrist and put their wrists together, and they would bind it with a cloth, and they would take their oath, their wedding vows. So there's a verse in 1 Samuel 18, King James just said that David and Jonathan made a covenant. But if you look, this is the Tree of Life version, and it actually says, then Jonathan cut a covenant with David. They made a blood covenant. So it's just, you know how some teachers really make um, stories in the Bible come to life. I mean, this guy really, Rosemary, you'll love him. He's great. So
I've heard of them.
You have?
Mhm.
Okay. You know, I can paste in the chat the playlist, but the only name that comes up is Dan's. So I don't know how to get it to everyone unless Dan um
We should all see it. Can you, if you go to the chat, is there a drop down to click everyone?
no, that's the thing. The only thing name that comes up is Dan.
Oh, then he must have it locked down.
Yeah, so Dan could maybe forward it to everyone. Um, but if you just look on YouTube, Covenant Series with Malcolm Smith, you'll find it. Also the verse Proverbs 18:24, which says there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother.
Mhm.
In the Old Testament, yeah, friend was not a word they threw around lightly. Friend was applied to someone with whom you have made a blood covenant. And so to say that a friend sticketh closer than a brother, well, you know, a brother is just, you know, someone who came out of the same womb you were in. But um, to call someone a friend, that means they're going to stick with you because they've made a covenant to stick with you or die, you know, to fight with you to the death, you know, uh, till the wheels fall off, as they say.
Mm.
So yeah, those are a couple things that really blessed me that I wanted to share with you.
That's neat. Can I make a comment? I'm looking at the REV. And in the REV, for Samuel 18, verse 3, and then Jonathan and David cut a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. And then if you read through the account, you realize that even though Jonathan was killed in battle, David honored that commitment all the
Mm-hmm.
way to children and took care of Jonathan's son.
Son
That's
Mephibosheth. Yeah, and
so
he makes the point that if you know it's a pretty big wound, and a lot of times some tribes would put something in that cut, like he mentioned gunpowder, but that's a new thing, maybe dirt or soil or something that would make the scar bigger, so that it was a constant reminder. You know, you're always looking at your hands, right? That
yeah.
that cut, that scar would be a constant reminder of the covenant that you took. And you know, David's covenant with Jonathan was a, you know, that a constant reminder of the promise that he made. And so yeah, it's a great record, the story of Mephibosheth.
If I could just bring up a point
Mhm.
about the covenants, a lot of the people that are into covenants, they don't recognize administrations. And so they think that covenants apply to the church, to us
Ah,
today, but they don't apply to us. God never made any covenants with the church. All the ones that are in there in the Old Testament. You know,
right.
they don't
And
apply at all to the church. That's something you got to watch with the covenant teachings.
um it's interesting that Jesus Christ said, now mind you, this was in the Christ administration, that this is a covenant in my blood, you know, at the Last Supper.
Mhm.
Um, so he made a covenant with, um,
With Israel, right?
right, exactly, by giving his life. But we reap the benefits of that because
Yeah.
by his stripes we were healed, you know.
Yeah. Deborah, what was the first man's name? And
Malcolm.
no,
Oh,
no,
Steve Stresspeck. It's an odd
Steve,
spelling. Steve Stresspeck. It's Strepek.
STR.
Ze, Zebra Edward, Pek.
Was that an article, Deborah?
He posts on his Facebook page,
Okay.
and there are 7 or 8 consecutive posts on Jesus Christ that I may know him.
But they're
Okay,
articles,
so
Mhm.
they're articles, not videos or audio?
They're not necessarily articles, they're just posts, essays that he writes and posts.
Okay.
and so we could find him easier by just going to your friends group and finding him there.
Probably, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
But
thank
like
you.
I said, I don't know if you need to be friends with him to see
Mhm.
his posts, but you could
Yeah.
you could always send him a friend request and see
Yeah.
if he accepts it. Yeah.
Check it out anyways.
Tell
Thank
him I
you.
sent you.
Okay. Um, Cher, did you have your hand raised before for sharing?
I do have something.
Okay.
Lately, some people have been bringing up to me whether you can lose salvation or not. So I wrote down a few things that I was thinking. If you can lose salvation because of something you do, then it's by works, not grace. And as far as I know, the only unforgivable sin is getting born of Satan's seed. All else God forgives because of his grace. And then I found this thing on the computer today, and I honestly don't know if I wrote it, but I didn't give anybody else credit for it. So I don't really know, but it's like a little story. So I wanted to read it tonight. It's called God and His Grace. A long, 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 long time ago, there was God and there was grace. And God made the first heaven and earth, and the adversary destroyed it. So God made the second heaven and earth, since before, in the beginning, there was grace. And God wanted to be loved, so he made Adam. But Adam was lonely, so God made Eve. He told them to fully enjoy paradise, but there was one thing they must not do: eat of the tree of good and evil. So Adam and Eve ate of the tree of good and evil, but there was grace. God placed them in a safe place to protect them and placed cherubim over the place to keep away the adversary. And thus many generations were born. And because of grace, God placed his seed in a woman to bear a child. Jesus walked perfectly, not like Adam and Eve did. And the multitude killed the man. But by grace, God rose him from the grave for us to believe on him, and by grace to get born again and have Holy Spirit in us and to live forever to love God. And after the gathering together, when Christ comes to get us, God will build a third heaven and earth for us to live forever and love him forever. And at that time, we will begin to realize how big God's grace is. So thank you.
You're sharing that. That's cute.
Great.
That's a great point. I think more along the lines of mercy, because if they're thinking that you can lose it because something you do, but God is rich in mercy, for them that love him. So how can you do anything? But it's a good point.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'd like to share something.
Kevin.
I didn't prepare well, but there's a guy named Cepho Dollar, a televangelist on a TBN network.
Yeah.
Got a good conversation with somebody that was teaching me how that we don't live by our own believing, but by believing of Jesus Christ, really in the faith of Jesus Christ. And, Rico Magnelli teaches a lot about that the difference between our believing and Jesus Christ believing. But she asked me to look this up. So I looked at some of his stuff, and man, is he teaching well on the grace of God pertaining to,
Faith of Jesus Christ.
pardon me. Well, excuse me. Yeah, the faith of Jesus Christ, and that is finished. And one of the things I love what he said. He said, "We stand in the realm of it is finished. Anything outside of that realm is not God's kids. But the people that are outside that realm, we want to get in." Just another great aspect of what God wants. He wants everybody to win. And those that are out, we don't look at them like that they're out, but they haven't gotten in yet. So there was a lot of neat stuff, but he has some of those other doctrines that we see in big churches and stuff too, but he didn't talk to any of the two teachers I watched. But it was great to see another ministry, especially a televangelist that was teaching on that stuff, because we don't usually see that.
Nice. Thank you very much. Yes. The faith of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, Dan.
Yeah, I got a couple things. One is this daylight savings time really threw me for a loop this year. I don't know why exactly, but I started looking at things differently because of it. I've always been one, well, I get up and I do this and I do this, I do this, and then I get into things I feel like God wants me to get into. But this year it's been, since the daylight saving thing, it's been more like my schedule sort of all gone, and it got me thinking a lot about cycles. So I think about more now instead of cycles instead of time, where I'm supposed to do something every day, a certain thing every day. Think more in terms of cycles. And in Ecclesiastes, I want to read a little bit about that from chapter 1. It says, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit hath the man of all his labor which he takes under the sun? One generation passes away, and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. You see the cycle there with the generations, but the earth is constant. And with the earth, there's cycles. The sun also rises, and the sun goes down, and hastes to his place where he rose. The wind goes toward the south and turns about to the north. It whirls about continually, and the wind returns again according to its circuits. There, you see a cycle with the wind. All the rivers run into the sea, if the sea is not full, and the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. So you see that cycle. And he says, all things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be. The things that happened in the past that maybe we don't even remember, even taught. Oh, look, it's going to come up again. And that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything wherever it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. Do you see the cycles sort of built into life? Isn't that interesting? That's something I never saw. I don't know, maybe you think I'm crazy, I was thinking this way. I just want to bring it up, and do you think I'm crazy for thinking that way? Not
No.
the cycles and not getting so anxious when I can't keep my schedule like I want to.
That's very good, Dan. And that's what we're supposed to do. When we're irritated about something or we don't like something, we need to look at ourselves and what in me doesn't like that? What can I change to make the situation better? That it's one of the keys. So that's very good to remember that. And I do not like daylight savings time either. We voted on that in New York and we were supposed to end it. And it's been years and they haven't said anything about it. And now it looks like that the nation is pretty 50-50, 50% of the people don't want it changed and 50% do want it changed. And so probably in this lifetime, I'll have to continue to put up with it. But I don't like it. Beasley doesn't like it.
Arizona doesn't have it, so move to Arizona.
I know.
I know,
Our
right?
daughter,
Indiana has multiple.
our daughter Jamie
Here.
lives. Sorry, go ahead.
We didn't have it for over 25 years. It was wonderful.
Yeah. So here in our daughter Jamie lives in Arizona, and she calls me every Tuesday morning on her way to work. So it's perfect because it's after 8, like 8:20 when she calls me. There's a 2-hour difference, but now because of daylight savings time, it's a whole hour later. So it still works, but yeah, it's
And the other thing I wanted to bring up, I don't know if you guys read this, but Steve Hefner fell asleep this last Friday. Some of you may know who he is. Tina, did you know Steve?
Steve who?
New York.
Steve Hefner. He went to Rye, New York.
Steve and Sandy Hefner.
Steve and Sandy Hefner.
They were in Wichita and then they went to New York.
Yeah, we know who he was.
So, but he's one of Steve and Sandy Hefner are one of the 4 couples that started the House of Acts, which was a place. These 4 couples, they got born again. They're hippies, you know. And they got born again. And they decided they moved a block from what do you call it? From Haight-Ashbury. They moved a block from the center of Haight-Ashbury, and they had the house, and the women would cook these meals, and then they'd invite all these kids over that weren't eating very well, and they'd witness to them, and they want a lot of people there. That's really what started the Jesus movement. That we've heard, the Jesus Revolution, and that movie was there. From there, what they did there at that house, and of course, Dr. Werwell was one of the men that went there and learned and talked with the kid. That's in one of the books. But Steve Hefner, he became the director or whatever of the the Way East, which is in New York at that time, I think. And his name Jimmy Dopp, who's also one of the other couple. They coordinated the Way West for a while. But anyway, they were the ones that started this whole the Jesus Revolution. Those 4 couples going there and ministering and preaching. So anyway, but I think Jimmy Dopp fell asleep quite a while ago, but Steve Hefner's fell asleep this past Friday. So I just want to let you know. And you could lift Sandy Hefner, his wife. That'd be good.
Well, Dan, I just wanted to say, as long as you're in your place called there, it
Yeah,
doesn't matter if your schedule changes, you'll be all right.
I'll be all right. Okay, thanks. I needed that. But anyway,
Yeah,
well, that's all I had.
well, thank you, Dan. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share? Okay, Deborah?
One last thing. I don't know if you're aware, but the Chosen series, the 5th season is coming to the theaters starting tomorrow.
Yeah.
So they're issuing like the first part 1 is going to be the first 2 episodes. Then they're going to release 3, 4, and 5, and then 6, 7, 8. So Dallas Jenkins, the writer and director, put out a little like an FYI kind of video clip today saying, if you're going to go to the theater and watch it, don't be late because you don't want to miss the opening scene. So just sharing that with you. I'll be in the theater in a seat tomorrow or Saturday. So
Thanks, Deborah.
sure.
Thank you for that update. Yeah. Let's see what I have here that I marked. I already told you that one. I don't know if you have ever heard of Sage Steele. Uh, Sage Steele worked for she's a biracial woman. Her father was an African American and her mother was Irish. And her mother and father were married in the 70s. And he went to West Point and then went in the military and retired from the military for 23 years or something as a colonel. And so her and her siblings were raised in that kind of environment and going from base to base wherever he was stationed. Very good upbringing. And she was one of the first women to work for ESPN. And she had a sports center show or whatever, and had a lot of other jobs. And so fast forward to COVID, and in 2021, it was mandated that they had to get the COVID vaccine at ESPN. And she waited to the last moment. She didn't want to do it, and she was going to lose her job if she didn't. And so she went ahead and did. And then she went to she had an appointment to be on a podcast right after that. And so she went and she was at the podcast and doing that. And the person that was hosting it saw the Band-Aid on her arm and asked her about it. And so she told him honestly and said, you know, I didn't want to do it. I had to do it. And some other things that she said in the podcast, they suspended her with pay, but she then had to apologize for, you know, her voicing her opinion, you know, as a private citizen. And so she did everything. And when she returned to work, she was ostracized. She was, jobs were taken away from her. And so she sued. She sued ESPN, and they settled 2 years later. But she is now has a podcast of her own, and she's on many podcasts, and she speaks out, and she was a Democrat her whole life, turned Republican, and was on the campaign trail with President Trump this last time. And the whole reason I told you the whole of her background is because on this podcast that I saw, which was a PragerU podcast, it was really good. If you want to check it out on YouTube, Sage Steele on PragerU. She explained that her father made her and her siblings memorize the last part of the cadets' prayer, the West Point cadets' prayer, and this is what made her change and sue ESPN. Okay, and it was this: help me to choose the harder right instead of the easier wrong, and never be content with the half truth when the whole truth can be won. Yeah. Yeah. And then, what was that?
Page
Okay.
Yeah. And after she said that, I remembered President Trump went to West Point. He went to West Point for 2 years before he went on to the University of Pennsylvania. So, yeah, I thought that was really good. And so I wanted to share
who
that.
she is. She's really pretty. And
Yes.
she was also instrumental, I think, in getting men out of women's sports. I think she's been involved a lot in that too.
Yes. Uh-huh. And after she left ESPN, she sold her house in Connecticut, and she's there in Florida with you guys. She's a Floridian now. Yeah. I think that this is the last thing that I had down here that I wanted to share with you. This is from Pastor Bill Johnson. He says, "Be more convinced of the beauty of tomorrow than the difficulties of today."
that hope.
What's that, Dan?
That we have that hope.
Yes, absolutely.